revolutionary nationalists so much later, and it's happening at a particular political moment. So you're absolutely right that a lot of the study of politics is very much now linked with a very different era of democratic identity-based politics, whether of language, whether of caste, whether of region, you know, which is where your Periyars and all of them begin, which is why the South took on very massive scale statue building. So I think that's important, that the first decades after independence, we're really dealing with a still different kind of post-colonial moment than we are now. And which is where this obsession with both renaming or recasting is not yet there. Now, Gopal Gandhi's reaction is an interesting one. I think it's a very moving piece that he writes, but it would not make political sense to bring them back. And this is something I would still say, yes, the Victoria Memorial perhaps, but why can we not go to Barakpur to look at it? It's a quiet exile and they're there, right? It's like the way, you know, they're lying in behind Bhaudaji. You know, you go all over, you know, what you do with massive statues. And this is a big concern. So with all the Lenin and Stalins that got dismantled, you have statue parks that are set up, right? They go into exile, they go into banishment. I think Calcutta's banishment is a nice one. You know, it's quite nice near the river bank, you can go there. So maybe that was Gopal Gandhi's one, that you know, the politics involved in bringing back what had been removed would have been a difficult choice as a governor. And I could see that it would not have made political sense bringing them back. Yes, and I think there was a lot of wit in the way he engages with it. And they're lovely pieces. That William Peel piece is a beautiful piece, and that's the one which we can see standing in the thing. It's quite a unique piece. It's like a Greek god figure. So yes, you know, a lot of people have said that Calcutta has treated colonial period statuary with great care, which is why Calcutta not only had the finest tradition, but you can also see the best examples still as against other cities, where I think the identity politics played out very quickly. Language politics, identity politics, maybe. I'm also thinking in post-partition Bengal, maybe there were far too many other pressing issues, right? That one had to handle, and maybe both removing statues and making new statues would take time to come through. But that's the period I need to look at. I need to go to corporation. I need to look at the records. So I think that period of the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, when they finally move, is an important time to think, you know, why are they finally moving when they do? And who are the people who are coming to replace them? So Gandhi is very early, yes. But it's interesting, it's Shujya Sen, it's Khudiram, it's Matungini Hajra, almost little known figures, but all martyrs. Interestingly, everybody, you know, if you think Prithilata Vadedar is there also. So this idea of martyrdom becomes quite important.
Yeah, maybe we can have the last question.
Thank you, Tapati. I was just thinking that in more recent times, I just saw a statue of presented by the Suriname government, which was presented at the which is now there at the Suriname Ghat. So while you were talking about the place or the site being more important, because when we went there on a tour of Metia Buruj, there were plenty of boys playing over there and they didn't know what it was all about. And this was about indentured labor. So it's a different genre which is being presented. It's official, it's transcontinental, and it's there is a plaque and it says who the people are, what is it marking, and
that's the place where the ships would have left.
Yes, that was the Suriname Ghat. So this is the site being pointed out, and it is official as well. So perhaps a new trend is it a continuity or a new trend that is coming up now? That is interesting.
I must go and look at this. You know, there's a lot of very interesting work. There's a wonderful essay called Statues in the Square, which looks at the debate in contemporary Britain on the Trafalgar Square statues, where we know that along with Nelson, they're really colonial period imperial heroes who are all, you know, they all stand there. And Ken Livingstone actually said that why, in a multicultural post-imperial Britain, why do we need these heroes and nobody knows who they are in any case, like just like nobody knows who all the people around here are. And there was a very interesting debate about keeping, but till today they've not been removed. So what's interesting is that whatever it is, unless there's a very major political upheaval which requires to massive statue demolitions, which happened all through East Europe. If you all have seen a film called Goodbye Lenin, you see this massive statue of Lenin's being carted away. So much of the fall of communism has been, just like communism required its massive monuments, so they required their destruction too. So political iconoclasm will come at these very, very specific moments when you do need to remove them. But I think for a lot of this kind of play, so despite the big debates, those statues remained. But I think the big entry into Trafalgar Square were two things. The South African embassy was there and Nelson Mandela made his way there. So that is important. You know, I remember as a student, there were the great marches to the South African because he was still in prison then. So Nelson Mandela. And there's one site that's kept empty where a work of modern sculptor puts their work. And I found that in Birmingham too, that suddenly modern sculptors are wanting to intervene in places where there's a lot of otherwise commissioned statuary to bring a different public attention there. So again, with Trafalgar Square, the debate was interesting, and it was in a very low pedestal on an eye-to-eye contact, and one of the first figures was of a disabled, pregnant, nude woman. So, you know, a completely alternative kind of politics. So the way they won that battle was not only by bringing Mandela in, but by having one plinth where a different kind of work of public art could come in. So it's interesting that if you look at throughout the cities, older statuary have not disappeared, right? I mean, you go through London, and that's why it's interesting. You go through the monarchical statue. When I want to compare this with, say, a city like Jaipur, for instance, which has a huge body of statuary where, you know, and they're normally under canopies. So the monarchical states have very, very different kind of statuary traditions. So I'm saying that even as political regimes change, unless there's a very violent kind of transposition, often statues remain in place. But I think in most cases, colonial period statues, look at Bombay. Kala Ghora has the name, but the figure has moved inside Baikulla. And interestingly, today in Kala Ghora, they just have the black horse without the figure on it, right? So they reclaim the place with just the figure of a black stallion and no figure of George or whoever was sitting on it, right? So you very often you have an empty pedestal as a sign of something which was removed. So in Rajpath, when Kingsway became Rajpath, they removed. Who would you put in there? There was such a debate, nobody was put in there, right? So very often the empty pedestal itself is a very symbolic sign of something that has been removed. So lots of interesting ways in which one can intervene within a political landscape of what were, you know, older statues.
Anybody else has a question? If not, we have had almost 2 hours of a fascinating lecture followed by a discussion, and Professor Tapati Guha-Thakurta with, has enlightened us with this fascinating talk with so many insights, so that we can think through all of these questions which came up during that talk. So it has been a fascinating section. Thank you so much, Tapati. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Professor Tapati Guha-Thakurta. And we have a small ritual before we disperse for tea outside.
Yes, excuse me, just 1 minute, please. We do thank the speaker of the evening for this fascinating talk. And if while coming for this talk, you had nonchalantly walked past the statue of Fraser, and thought, why do statues matter at all? I'm sure after listening to this lecture, you will go there, stand, and do a little bit of more study with all these statues. And about the remark about Chennai, which was made, of course, a lot of names they have been retained, but two major names they saw to it that they changed, that Madras became Chennai, and the arterial road, Mount Road, became Anna Shalai. You see, the two major changes. Yeah, but still people call it Mount Road. So we have a little token of appreciation on behalf of Victoria Memorial. Tapati did talk about the importance of drapery in all these statues. We have a little piece of drapery for her now after listening to her lecture as a little memento to remember this evening by. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please do join us for a cup of tea outside.